Hey, I'm Hunter from SkillThrive, and in this course, you'll design and build a responsive card layout with Sketch, HTML, CSS Grid, and CSS Flexbox. If you'd like to download the course files, including the final code and sketch file, all you have to do is become a free member on skillthrive.com. There's a link in the description. After you join, you'll get instant access to these course files and all of our current free courses. Now with that out of the way, let's get started on the course. Before we jump into Sketch, let's make sure we have the things installed that I'm going to be using in this course. Now, the first one is the Unsplash Sketch plugin. Now, if you don't know what unsplash.com is, essentially it's just a free stock photo website. And this plugin allows you to pull photos into your project really quickly. And it's really useful just for quickly prototyping. Now, if you have specific photos that you want to use, feel free to use those. You don't need this plugin, but it's something useful in case you do want to prototype quickly. And to get started, it's really simple. Just click on the download now and then install the plugin. So the next thing we need to do is make sure that we have the Google fonts installed. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll be sure to link that in the description. And if you're downloading the course files, the fonts are already there for you in the fonts folder. All right, so once you actually install the fonts and then the Sketch Unsplash plugin, let's go ahead and jump into Sketch and get started. So I'm just going to open up Sketch here, hit A to bring up the artboard tool, come to responsive web on this drop down, and then select desktop HD. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and set up the layout for this. And to do that, I'm going to come up to View, Canvas, and then I'm going to do Show Layout, which shortcut is Control L. Now, this is what my default layout currently looks like. Now, if yours doesn't look like this, what you need to do is come up to View, Canvas, and then Layout Settings, and then take a look at the layout settings that I have here and make sure yours matches perfectly. Now, if your columns are off, for instance, let's say they're off a little bit to the left, like this, you would have to come back into the layout settings and then make sure you click center, and then Sketch is going to center that for you. All right, so now once you have that set up, go ahead and click OK, and let's go ahead and create our first large card. And to start, I'm going to hit R on my keyboard to bring up the rectangle tool. I'm going to click here and just drag out on for a width about 6 columns here. And let's go ahead and just turn off the border. On the height, I'm going to set that specifically to 350. And then let's just zoom in here and make sure that this rectangle is actually touching the edge of this layout. So let's just zoom in here, and we can see that this one is touching the left side. And let's just come over to this one and just zoom in. And there we go. That one looks good too. So we know that is nice and aligned properly. And the next thing I'm going to do is select the rectangle and make sure we add just a little bit of a corner radius on this of 5 pixels. Then I'm going to duplicate this, so Command D. And then I'm going to just drag the height down until it's about halfway. Then I'm going to come into the color on this one, change it to the linear gradient, change this first color to black, and set the alpha or the opacity to 0. Then on this second color, I'm going to set that to pure black as well. And on the alpha or the opacity, I'm going to set that to 70%. And the next thing I'm going to do is just come over here and just rename these files just so we're nice and organized. So let's rename this one to card1. And on this one, let's just go ahead and just call that overlay. So now let's go ahead and show you how the Sketch Unsplash plugin works. And once you install the Sketch plugin, you can come up to Data, and you'll see Unsplash here, and you can either select a random photo or you can search for a photo, and then I can type in something like mountain, and then click OK. And it's going to upload a photo from Unsplash based off of the mountain keyword. Now, if you don't like it, you can do the process again until you like a specific photo, but remember, these aren't necessarily the ones you're going to be using in your actual live website. It's just for quick prototyping, so you can make sure the client gets an idea of what it's going to look like. All right, so now that we have that, let's go ahead and just add the 2 text layers here that are going to talk about what this is. And the first one is just going to be a category layer. So let's go ahead and just click here after we hit T on our keyboard, and then type in something like guide. And then I'm just going to select this. And on this one, we actually want the font to be the Mole font. So let's come up here and type in Mole. I want the weight on this one to be bold. And I want the size to be 16. And on the color here, I want to set it to this off-white, which is a hex code of ECF0F1. And let's go ahead and save this to our document colors by clicking here on this little plus sign, making sure that we have document selected here in the dropdown. And that's going to add this little color patch or this color palette that we can come back and select in this document next time we open it, so we know which colors we're using in this actual design. All right, so now that we have that, it's just going to kind of sit here for now. And let's go ahead and make sure that it's actually above the overlay, so it's not being darkened. And the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and create the title. So to do that, I'm just going to hit T on my keyboard. And let's go ahead and just type in something like, whoops, it looks like it didn't. There we go. I don't know what happened there. So lost in the city is where I found myself. And on this, let's go ahead and just select this. And on this one, let's actually change it back to the Libre Baskerville. And let's see, the weight is going to be set to regular. And the size is going to be set to 24. And the line is going to be set to 32. And we're going to make sure that we have just that off-white color, which we do. And let's go ahead and just move this over till it's about 16 pixels from the left. So if you don't know this, you can actually just hold Option on your Mac. And if I have this layer selected and kind of come over to this layer here, which is the card, it's going to give us an idea, or not an idea, it's going to give us how many pixels it is away from that corner. So right now you can see that it is just 16 pixels. It looked like 15 for a second. But if I come down here to the bottom, you can see that I have 29 pixels. So if I hold Shift and then down arrow, that's 19, and then 3 more should be 16. There we go. And let's go ahead and just drag this one out a little bit. Make sure that that one's going to be 16. So you can come up here and just -1 from the height, or excuse me, the width, and that's going to be 16. And on this one, let's move it left aligned and then 10 pixels from that layer. So that looks like 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so that's basically the card design. So let's go ahead and just group this layer, or these 4 layers. So Command G, and just call this Card 1. All right, so now what we want to do is go ahead and design the card, the smaller card. And to do that, I'm going to hold Option and just drag this out to the right. Then let's go ahead and just rename this layer to Card 2. We can expand this. Go ahead and rename this while we're at it, Card 2. And then I'm going to select Overlay in Card 2. And I'm just going to drag this to the left until it's just 3 columns wide. And let's just zoom in to make sure that we're aligned correctly, which it looks like we are. Let's go ahead and just for good measure, make sure we're aligned here. And we should be 16 pixels from the one on the left because we set our gap in the layout settings to 16. And you can see there that we are 16 pixels from the first one. All right, so now what we want to do is go ahead and just do something, change this, just kind of vary it up a little bit. Let's do travel, and we can type in a different thing here, maybe guide to Iceland. And let's go ahead and just bring in this. So it's 16 pixels. So it needs to be one more, so 7, 16 all the way around. That's 10. And one thing we want to do is just go ahead and change the background image on this one as well. So let's come into Card 2, Data, and okay, just change that up to get a random mountain photo. And the next thing I'm going to do is just select this Card 2, hold Option, and then drag out to duplicate that. And we can go ahead and essentially just do the same thing, just renaming this layer so it's nice and organized. And with this layer selected, I can go ahead and change the photo. And then we can come in and change the title to something else. So just do something like this. Change it to a different category. And then we obviously need to move this up. So I'm going to select the category and the title layer and move it up till it's 16 pixels from the bottom. And there we go. So now what I'm going to do is essentially just duplicate all these, rename the layers, change some of the text and the photos, and I'm just going to speed through this because it's repetitive, but I still want you guys to see the process. So with that said, I'm just going to go ahead and speed through this. So once I finish the second layer, I'm just going to select these three here and just move them up so they're 16 pixels from the first row. So let's go ahead and just do that. So 18 and 16. All right, and now what we need is some extra space here. So let's go ahead and just select the artboard here and just drag this down to give us some more space. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the first three cards here. I'm going to hold Option and just drag this out because we want to just essentially just duplicate this layout and move it 16 pixels from the second row. And obviously we want to move these on top. So just go ahead and move up these copied layers like so. And then we can just go ahead and continue the process of changing the background, the names, the titles, and things like that. So I'm just going to speed through that. All right, so once we did the last card, let's go ahead and just double check here on some of the spacing. So I'm just going to zoom in and just check everything, make sure everything is lined up. So this should be 19 from here. So let's go ahead and just select these and make sure they're 16. Excuse me, not 19, but 16, 16. Make sure that that's 16. Cool, so everything looks like it's nice and aligned. And now what I'm going to do is just go ahead and take all these cards. So I'm going to select them, Command G, and just call that grid. And then we can just go ahead and center that here on our project. And then just for good measure, let's click here to make sure that's centered. And then we can center it like that as well. And that's basically everything we wanted to do as far as designing this in Sketch. And now that we have this ready, let's go ahead and start writing the HTML so we can get this ready for the web. So with that said, I'll see you in the next video. So to get started, I'm going to come to my desktop or anywhere where we want to actually save our project. I'm going to right click and create a new folder and then name this folder just, grid layout. And then I'm going to come into Visual Studio Code, which is my code editor of choice. Let's go ahead and just maximize this screen. And then I'm going to come up to File, Open. I'm going to head to my desktop, come into the grid layout and just open this entire folder. Then I'm going to just exit out this welcome. And then on this grid layout, I'm going to click here and create an index.html file. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and create our other files here. So styles.css. And then I'm going to come into my index.html and go ahead and just prepare this file. So let's go ahead and do doc type HTML. Then I'm going to do HTML here, open and closed. Then let's do a head tag. Go ahead and do a title tag here for our site, and we'll just call this simple CSS grid. Then we can do the character set here. So let's go ahead and do meta character set, and that's going to be UTF-8. Whoops, I'll eventually get it. There we go. And go ahead and do that. And then next, let's go ahead and pull in this CSS. And that's going to be style sheet. href is going to be right here, which is the styles CSS folder. Go ahead and close that. All right, so now that we have the head, let's go ahead and bring in the body tag. So body, open and close. And here I'm going to create a new div. And on this div, I'm going to give it a class called just feed. And this is just going to be all the cards. And once we do that, we can go ahead and create another class here and give that a class called card. And then within that, we're going to have a paragraph tag with a class equal to card category. And then I'm going to just go ahead and copy this p tag, paste it beneath, and then change that from card category to card title. And then let's go ahead and just type in our first thing here. So I'm going to do travel. And then on the title, I'm just going to type in the title here. So now that we have the card essentially already built in HTML, what I'm going to do is just copy this card here. So Command C, and then paste that in 8 more times. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And now what I'm going to do is just come in and change the category and title for each card. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that right now. And there we go. Once we fill in and change that content, let's go ahead and just save this. Let's head into our project here. So let's go into Finder, Desktop, Grid Layout, and just go ahead and open this. And you can see here, we have everything laid out. Now, obviously there's no styling on it because we still have to do the CSS. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into the next video where we'll style this card layout. The first thing we want to do in our styles.css file is to import the Google fonts. So I want to head to fonts.google.com, and up here in the search, let's go ahead and type in Baskerville. And then I'm going to click here on the plus here. It's going to add it to our font selection. And then let's go ahead and type in our other font, which is Mully. And let's go ahead and add that as well. Then we can expand this. Let's come into Customize and select the fonts we want. Now on Mully, I actually just want the bold 700. So let's uncheck the regular, come down to Libre, make sure that is on regular 400, and then we can come back into embed. Then we can come to add import and just select the part that's in between the two style tags. So let's just copy that, come back to our styles.css file, and then paste that in. Then we can start writing our CSS here. So the first thing I'm going to do is do an asterisk, which is just like targeting everything. And this is just going to set a level playing field and override some of the styling that comes default in browsers. So one of those I'm going to add is the box sizing. And on that, I'm just going to set box sizing to border box. And then let's go ahead and zero out the margin and the padding. Then on the body, let's go ahead and add a padding to this. So let's do 5% on top and bottom, and then 10% on the sides. Then on background color, let's go ahead and add this hex code. Now we didn't do this in Sketch, but I ended up just kind of wanting something a little dark instead of the white. So do something like that. Then we could go ahead and do the feed. And this is going to be using grid. And we are going to set the grid width on the cards later down. But for now, let's go ahead and set how many actual columns we want in this grid. And what we want is we want to repeat 12 columns, and we want the size of those to be 1 fraction. So it's going to take the available width and divide that by 12 equal sections. Then we can do grid auto rows. And here I want to set it to 350 because the card height is going to be 350 at all times. Then we can do grid gap. And we can set that to 16 pixels, which is what we set in the layout in Sketch. Then on margin, we can do 40, 0, 40, 0. Then we can come into card category. And on here, I want to do font family. This is going to be Mully with a fallback of sans serif. Then we can do font size. And that's going to be 16 pixels. Line height is going to be 18 pixels. Font weight is going to be 700. Color is going to be that off-white. So let's go back into Sketch and get that hex codes because I don't know it off the top of my head. So I'm just going to go in this palette, copy this, Command C, and then just paste it in here. So hashtag that. And then let's go ahead and set a margin of 0. Then let's go ahead and do the card title. And here we are going to do font family. And that's going to be Libre Baskerville. And the fallback here is just going to be a serif font. Then on font size, we want to set that to 24 pixels. Line height is going to be set to 32 pixels. Font weight is going to be set to 400. And the color is going to be that off-white, which is this one right here. And then last margin is going to be set to 10 pixels. And then the rest is just going to be 0. All right, so now that we added this couple styles, let's go ahead and just save this. And I'm going to jump into Google here where we have the file open and just refresh that. So we can see the background for the bodies change, and also the styling here on the category and titles have changed. Now, this is just taking up equal spaces. That's why they're so skinny right now. So we're going to go through later, like I said, and set the actual size for each card. But for now, let's continue on with just the card styling. So I'm just going to do card. That's going to have a background size of cover. Background repeat is going to be set to no repeat. Background position is going to be center. Border radius is going to be 5 pixels, which is what we set in Sketch. Display, instead of grid, we're going to do flex. And the flex direction, instead of row, we're going to set it to column. So things are going to be lined up and down. All right, then we're going to justify content. That's going to be flex end. Padding is going to be 20 pixels all the way around. And then we're going to add a transition here of all 0, actually just 0.3 seconds, and add an ease to that. So what that's going to do is when we hover over this, it's going to add a nice smooth transition when we actually transform it and scale it up. We'll do that right now with card hover. And on this, we want the cursor to change as well. So we want that to change to pointer. We also want to add a box shadow to this. Let's go ahead and fix this. And on this one, we want the following settings. So that's going to be 0 pixels, 30 pixels, 18, and then -8. And we want that to be RGBA. This is going to be a pure black, so 0, 0, 0. And then for the alpha, we want that to be 0.1. Then last, we can do the transform. So transform, we want the scale to transform by 1.02. So a little bit goes a long way here on the scale. All right, so let's go ahead and save that. So not much has changed, but you can see actually when we hover over these, you can actually see them scaling up. Now it doesn't look good right now because these are still kind of sized weirdly. So let's go ahead and start setting the background images on these. And to do that, I'm just going to use card and then nth child and then target which one. So this is going to be the first child, so the first card. And we're going to set a background image here. And we're going to add a linear gradient. And on this linear gradient, we want a gradient that's going to start to bottom. And on RGBA, so the first point, we want that to be 10, 10, 10. And we want it to be 0. And that is at position 0. So 0%. Then we want to do, let's go ahead and just copy this RGBA value. And actually it's a comma there, not a semicolon. And this is going to be 10 all the way across, 0, but this is going to be at 50%. So what this means is that from 0 to 50, there's no color here. So that's exactly what we did in Sketch as well. So let's go ahead and copy this again. And this time we want it to be 0.7, and that's going to be at 100%. And then we need to go ahead and close that, add a comma, then we can do URL. And for the URL, we're going to pull in images here. Now, if we expand this, we don't have an image folder yet. So let's go ahead and click here. We'll add a new folder called images. Then let's go into the course files. And I have these 9 images that have been resized and optimized. And then I'm just going to drag that into this new folder. So you can see that those got pulled in. And then on this URL, we can go ahead and start typing in a location here. So images. And then you can see here that we can just select the first image. And let's go ahead and close that out with a semicolon. And I think here we don't need that. So we just go ahead and delete that. It looks like a typo. All right, so now if we save this and go back here and refresh it, we can see that image is pulling in, which is a good sign. So now what I want to do is just copy this CSS here, paste it, and then I'm just going to change this to 2, 2, and then repeat that until we have the 9 images pulled in. All right, now that we added the 9 images, let's go ahead and save this CSS file. Come back here and refresh it. And there we go. We can see all of our cards pulling in the background images, which is exactly what we expected. All right, so now we can go ahead and start actually setting the card size. And to do that, I'm going to do card. And then I'm going to use nth child again. So nth child, and then I'm going to target the first one. Then I'm going to do nth child again. And I'm going to target the 6th card, and then nth child again. And this time we're going to target the 7th card. So this is going to be the big cards. And on this one, we want it to set grid column start to span 6. So it's going to take up 6 columns. And let's go ahead and set that and save that. Now if we refresh this, you can see that the first 6th and 7th cards are now resized. Now, obviously, these aren't resized correctly, so we need to do something similar up here. So let's go ahead and just copy this. And we're going to do nth child 2, 3, 4, and then nth child, I think 5, 8, and then last is going to be nth child 9. And instead of spanning 6, we want this one to span 3. All right, so we will go ahead and save that, and now refresh. Everything should be sized properly. Cool. So now, even when we hover over this, you can see that scale effect take place, which looks really cool. All right, now let's go ahead and just test out when we actually make this responsive. So if we scale it down, you can see now it's starting to look bad, right? It's obviously, these cards need to be full width. So what we can do is use media queries to make those different sizes at different screen widths. So start off first with the media query here for the screen. And this is going to be for screens where the max width is 1200 pixels. And what do we want to do when that happens? Well, we want all the children here. So our card nth child, to target all of them, we can just do n. And we want that to have a grid column start of span 6. Okay, so let's go ahead and just copy this. And then we can paste it below. And here, let's change, instead of 1200, let's do 800 pixels. And this time we want it to be full width, so span 12. And then save that, refresh. And now you'll see once we go smaller, it's going to jump to 2. and then full width. And then drag it back out. Now that's basically everything we wanted to do for the CSS. Now, there is one extra step that I want to talk about, and that is optimizing this for other browsers and making sure that there's any prefixes that we might need to add. Now, if you don't know what prefixes are, essentially, not all browsers might have the same capabilities as other ones. So for instance, let's say Chrome, for instance, has a special transform that is supported specifically in Chrome, but it's not yet supported in Mozilla or Safari. So you have to use something called prefixes to make sure that your CSS code is compatible on those browsers as well. And what you can do is you can go into a tool called autoprefixer.github.io. And what I want to do here is just go ahead and copy all this code that we wrote, Command C. I'm going to paste it here. And what it's going to do is it's going to look for things that need prefixes. So for instance, Mozilla here, it's creating a grid column, and that prefix -ms is specifically used for that browser. So let's go ahead and just scroll through and see if there's anything else here. So WebKit is another one. We see WebKit again, so that's another prefix. WebKit here as well for the linear gradient that we added. And I think you guys get the point, right? So all these things are added for you automatically. So now what we can do is just go ahead and copy all of this, or select it, copy it. And I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in here to our styles.css. And let's go ahead and save that and just double check our design again. So I'm going to refresh it. And everything looks like it's working fine. So let's go back into our course where we actually have the project. And here I want to open this in Safari. And then check this out in Safari. So everything looks good in Safari. Let's go ahead and just make sure that scales nicely. Okay. And then last, let's go ahead and check Mozilla. Or excuse me, Firefox. And let's go ahead and check the scale. Everything looks good. And then check the responsiveness. Cool, so everything looks good. All right, so that wraps up everything for the CSS. Now what we're going to do is actually get this code live using Netlify drop. So with that said, I'll see you in the next video. Now, before we get this on Netlify using Netlify drop, I want to make sure that this CSS is optimized for production. And what I mean by that is by minifying the CSS, you get rid of all the extra spaces and line breaks that make it easily readable to a human. That way a computer can go through it faster, therefore speeding up your website. And to do that, it's pretty simple. What we're going to do first is head into where our project is. And I'm going to add a new folder here and just call this production. Then I'm going to select the images, index, and styles, and then I'm going to actually Command C to copy that and then paste it into this production. All right, so the next thing, we don't want to optimize the index HTML, but we do want to optimize the styles.css. So what I'm going to do first is go ahead and rename this to styles-min, so we know this is minified. And what we also need to do is go ahead and come into this index and just open this up and make sure we say here on the link, when we're pulling this in, we need to change that to min. So now let's go ahead and save that. And then we can close that out, come into this min file, go ahead and open that in Visual Studio Code. And what I want to do is I'm going to Command A to select it all and then Command C to copy it. And I'm going to head to a website called minifier.org. And then I'm just going to paste it in here, make sure that we have CSS selected, and then click on minify. So you can see now that this is all the line breaks and spacings are gone. So I'm going to do Command C to copy that, head back into this minify file, go ahead and delete all of it and then paste that in. You can see here all of our CSS is now no spacing, and everything is on one single line, so a computer can read this even faster than it could before. So now let's go ahead and save that. And now let's go ahead and go into Google and type in Netlify drop. And the first link here says BitBalloon. and you should be at app.netlify.com/drop. Then we can head back into our project, select this production folder, and then drag it and drop it here. And Netlify is going to build the site. And we can open that up. And there we go. There's our site. So we can go ahead and make sure everything looks good. We can scale it down. And there we go. So let's make sure the hover looks good. And there you go. In just a couple minutes, you were able to take this project and get it live on the web using Netlify Drop. So now you have a live link that you can share with your friends and family, or put on your portfolio, or share it with a client. If you like this course, please be sure to subscribe and check out our other videos that go into design and code as well, including our free 3.5-hour course on how to build a website with Gatsby and React. Again, I'm Hunter from SkillThrive, and I'll see you in the next one.